on the Josh Emmett side, he's 38 years of age and has fallen short against two fighters that I think we would all classify as elite now in Yair Rodriguez and Ilia Topuria. 2018, 5 years ago, Josh Emmett, post-Jeremy Stevens fight, suffered from vertigo, multiple facial fractures, an internal fracture of the orbital floor. This is a guy in the past who has had bone marrow injected from his back into his knee, and I understand that he still believes that he is in the shape of all these featherweights, and he proved as much this weekend. And I do still look at the top 7, top 8, and see winnable fights for Josh Emmett. This was a big setback, obviously, in terms of his championship aspirations at 38 years of age. But is it fair of me, as a fan of mixed martial arts, Ray, and as a fan of Josh Emmett, the individual, to ask if, like, sustaining damage like this is, you know, worth the price of admission, right? Because we're going to get into the 10-7 round 4 scorecard from Chris Lee that I'm in support of, right? And I'm going to get you the language on all of that and what constitutes a 10-7 round. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting softer, but I just don't love seeing a guy who's had historically facial issues, absorb this type of damage, man. It's just hard for me to watch. I don't know.
Yeah, no, look, I think you have every right with that opinion. But I'll tell you, when you go to the dictionary and you look up tough motherfucker, It says Josh Emmett. This guy is tough. Even after a 10-7 round, he came out in that 5th round winging. Like, again, it's not like he was told to do something and he didn't do it. He did exactly. He did the only thing he could have done at that point. That was it. You know what I mean? And if the fight didn't get taken down and he started getting lumped up, I think then it's a case to, maybe get him out of there. But you had to give him his shot, and he responded appropriately. Look, as long as these guys know what they're in for, John, that's the problem, right? They do know what they're in for. They trained for those type of beatings. I think at least they should be. And
right.
It's just each guy is different, but Josh Emmett would not have wanted that fight. I mean, like, again, can he take it? Can he not take it? Look, at the end of the day, guys, this shit is not good for you. You can't think any of it's good for you. I tell you, I used to have a doctor I trained. He didn't even want to get jabbed in the head. Like, no, I don't want no head trauma at all. Like, I said, light. You go, no. You know what I mean? So as long as you know what the consequences are and you're well educated on everything and what could happen and you decide to do it, it's like, jumping out of an airplane, doing whatever that is. I mean, you got to know the responsibility and or the repercussions that could happen, and that's it. So I know it looks bad, and I'm with you. I'd rather see everybody healthy if that's what you're asking. But
well, no, I agree with everything that you just said, but I think the ignorance, Kenny, comes in the long term, what you can't quantify in terms of that damage. But yes, Josh Emmett after this fight was completely clear of mind. His cardiovascular base would have allowed him to fight a 6th round. Like, he was livid that he didn't win the fight, and when he heard the 50-42, Kenny, he got even more angry because he obviously thought the fight was more competitive. He did land a lot statistically. I don't know, Kenny, you come from a medical family. Maybe he's fine. But for me, like, the visual ain't great.
Yeah. It's not great. And the thing is, he's been in some really tough fights. And, can he still be a top guy at 145 pounds? Yes. And again, what the hell does my opinion matter? But if he came to me and he said, "Hey, Kenny, what do you think?" That would be, and if he was one of my fighters, I would say, "Hey, man, listen, unless we're going to change your style completely and really add in some things and, you're committed to it. But if you're fighting this way, can you be a top guy? Yes. Will you ever win the belts?" And that's probably his goal. And I think it should be the goal of everyone who is fighting at a high level. I would say it's time to retire. Why? Because, here's the thing. You could be that perfect matchup, and that is so tough, but not skilled enough. And if you are that dude that is very tough, but not skilled enough, you're most likely going to get a terrible beating. And then there's going to be another terrible beating against someone else. And what happens is, organizations will see that and they'll go, well, this is a tough guy. Here's a Tony Ferguson. Here's a Gaethje type guy. Let me feed him to this up and comer. And what you end up becoming is a punching bag. I think for some of these guys that have respect for themselves, that have been around the game for them, for a long time, you don't want to be a punching bag. I mean, you look at, I hate to use an example, look at BJ Penn. Where it's awesome because you're like, man, that's awesome. You still want to fight, yada, yada, yada. But man, this is not who you are at this stage of the game. the car needs a new engine. We need new tires. You got no brakes. You got these things, and you're hanging in there. You're tough, but you're continuing to take way too much damage. And it's at that point where you go, all right, it needs to stop. And it's tough because there's that very fine line between extremely tough and extremely stupid. And we've all played that game, unfortunately, as fighters, as competitors. We think we could do more, and no one needs to tell me what I'm doing, and that's where, you have to be really careful, I think.